Okay, so the best show or film that you didn't watch at first, but you tuned in to see what the buzz was about, and you ended up loving it. Um, Chris, why don't you go first?
Oh, I'm glad because I was hoping that no one would take this one from me. This was the one I kind of had the hardest time filling the slots for because I think like you guys, I mean, as genre fans, I think we're all sort of very directed consumers, like media consumers, and I don't often watch things that I don't know about first, or I don't want intentionally, I always I'm sort of very intentional in what I watch. And the buzz stuff usually comes from a lot of mainstream stuff, which I'd never find appealing anyway, so I never watch it. But I remember at one point when I was so into Farscape, I was watching that on Sci-Fi, and I tuned over to Fox, and I saw these people in brown clothes in this dull set, and I said, I don't want to watch this. What is this crap? And that was Firefly. And I, for the longest time, based on seeing it for 5 minutes juxtaposed against the acid trip that is Farscape, I was just like, I have no interest in watching Firefly. But I don't know how it happened. I just happened to watch all 9 episodes in a row. And after the first episode, I was hooked. And by the time it was done, I think the Serenity movie was out then. So I watched Serenity. And then with everything that happens with that, it was like the most emotional journey for it packs such a punch and there's so little of it. And I think that that was probably the one that stood out to me most was Firefly. I was never going to watch that show, and now I wish it was on still.
Yeah. Um, well, there's 14 episodes of Firefly,
I thought it
but
was 9.
I think it. I can look it up, but I'm pretty sure
It's
it's
14.
14. Yeah, but
So you
I'm right
probably
there
have
with
some you haven't seen yet, you lucky bastard.
No, I think I've seen the whole series. I mean,
but I didn't. Yeah, I
by
didn't
Two Hands of
watch.
Blue.
I didn't watch Firefly when it first started either, and I don't remember why I watched it. I think I watched. I think it was on Hulu, and I just sat down and watched the first episode. And the first episode is a lot different than the rest of the series. But yeah, I really, and by that time I think Serenity had already come out, so I was way behind the 8 ball on that. But yeah, I'm right there with you. That was a great show. It got canceled for stupid reasons, and uh, there have been rumblings of, we live in a time where TV shows like to come back and do reunion 10 episode reunions or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe one day it'll happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
Don't do it.
They,
Don't do it.
they
I don't
did
think
a,
it's going to happen. They did
they
it,
did
and
a
it was a flop.
Yeah.
they did a roundtable discussion with some of the actors and a lot of the producers and writers of the show, where they talked about things that were supposed to happen on the show were it to not be canceled. And there were things like what was the prostitute's name again? I can't remember.
Inara.
Nora.
Yeah, she was dying. She had a disease and she was dying, and they never got to that. They never got to that point in the show where they were going to talk about that. So when you watch that, and if you go back and watch it now with that knowledge, a lot of those scenes play out a lot different
That
than
makes
they
her
did
like
when you,
like every opera heroine that I've ever seen. I mean, because that's usually they're dying of consumption and they're courtesans. So it's you have Manon Lescaut right there. You have Traviata right there. It's just on and on.
Yeah, I had an almost identical experience with Firefly. I watched the pilot, and Mal was so unlikable in the pilot that I wanted nothing else to do with the show. And then I actually saw Serenity before I saw the rest of the series, and when I finally did watch the series, a lot of the things on my list I've watched because my friend Adam, who was like my best friend, we've known each other since high school. I'll go to visit him and he'll be like, "Have you seen this?" "No." "Dude," plonks me down in a chair, duct tapes me to the chair, puts the forks in the eyes and puts it on.
That's violent.
And and
well, he had never seen Clockwork Orange. So.
Yeah,
that I have seen. So he made me watch Firefly, and we watched like 3 or 4 episodes. And I was like, "This is great," but I kept waiting for River to turn into a ninja, and this, that, and the other thing to happen. I thought Serenity holds up pretty well as just a movie on its own, if you don't know the story that's behind it. But I don't think it really reflects the series all that well. But I think the series is great. It's not the perfection we like to pretend it is. It just it would have been great to see where it went organically, as opposed to kind of the somewhat contrived ending we got in Serenity. But yeah, it could certainly have been one of the greatest shows ever if it had been allowed to continue on.
Thanks, Fox.
Yeah. Have you guys read any of the comics?
Fox does, so. No, I've heard of them. They continued it on.
Yeah, I have two
on
hardcover editions because that's how much of a fan I became of it. And I don't buy many comics these days, but they had these really beautiful collected editions with supplemental artwork and all the sucker stuff. Okay, and they were okay. I felt that they sort of captured, but without the actors bringing the characters to life, you lose something that's so fundamental to that show. And it's just one of the best ensemble pieces I think I've ever seen. And it was also subversive for its time. I mean, the reason I liked Farscape was because it was sort of like the anti-Trek. And at that point, Next Gen was so stodgy and politically correct and this grand human experience spread among the stars. And Farscape was the complete opposite of that. So I think that Firefly had a lot of the same sort of sensibility in that way. It wasn't about this grand, bold exploration. It was just about people scrapping by on the outer rim and, doing deals and doing what they can and, trying to find some kind of moral center where there really isn't any. And that's what I liked about it. And I love the fact that they were often at odds with each other. I mean, one of the best scenes in the entire series is when Mal whacks Jane upside the head with a freaking pipe wrench. And puts him out the airlock, and he's like, "Are you with this crew? Or you're not with this crew. You decide." And I mean, that was it blew my mind. So,
Virginia, have you ever seen Firefly?
I have. I saw it. I think I've seen it twice all the way through, but it's been a while.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh well, what's one that you have on your list?
I just recently, I realized the first one of these movies came out in 2008, but I just very recently started watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. We've watched 7 of them so far. So we have Thor: The Dark World sitting by our TV waiting to be watched.
It's much better than people let on.
No, it isn't.
But at first it was just like, is one of those ridiculous, well, everybody likes it. I'm going to be contrary just because I don't want to watch it. And then it just kind of got to where, well, I guess I haven't seen it and I don't really know, what's going to be happening in this next movie because I haven't seen all the ones before that. So, but with these most recent ones being like so big and so like just pervasive through everything, I'm like, okay, I need to get on the ball here and see what this is all about. And I mean, it's not like, this is the greatest piece of cinematic ever made or whatever. But it's like, okay, pop some popcorn, get your soda. Things are going to blow up. There's going to be like an obvious message and it's fine. And so it's very much what I expected from superhero movies. And that's okay with me because that's what I wanted.
That's the great thing about the MCU. It's not classic literature. We're not going to see any of them going, I want to thank the Academy, but they entertain the living bleep out of you.
They really do.
Yeah.
Well, Black Panther was nominated. Didn't win.
That's true.
It was nominated. Okay, so The Dark World is not a terrible movie. It's just my least favorite. But when you're talking about a series that's 22 movies long, one of them has to be at the bottom, So yeah. So the Dark World is at the bottom for me. Some people like it, But
I thought it was mediocre until the third act, and the third act gets so gonzo that I was just cracking up, and I walked out of the theater with just a giant smile on my face. So, it stuck the landing, and that's really what I remember most about it.
For me, I didn't really care for the character of Thor at all until Ragnarok, and everything since Ragnarok I've liked. They took the stick out of his butt, and yeah, they made him kind of an airhead, but I can go with it. It's a comic book, but but everything since Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame, all that, I've loved the character since then. So
My problem with the Dark World, and this is, I'm not going to go into spoilers, don't worry, but is that the quote unquote science of the MCU is doesn't bear scrutiny. I will grant you that, but at least they generally stay internally consistent. And some of the stuff that happened at the end of the Dark World just was like, even had me going, oh come on. And I don't want to go into details. One, because I don't remember, because I don't remember. And poor Christopher Eccleston was so wasted in that movie. But you know what? It's kind of like when Star Trek has a bad episode, but you'd still rather watch it than almost any other good episode of any other series. The Dark World is only bad in comparison to the rest of the movies. It's not terrible. It's just kind of like meh, which compared to all of the other ones, meh comes out as bad. So
I didn't even remember that Christopher Eccleston was in that movie.
I was about to say, wow, I didn't know he was in it.
He can't be as wasted as he was in G.I. Joe. So
he was in G.I. Joe.
Yeah. He was Destro in G.I. Joe. Yeah. Okay, Rick, what about you?
Okay, so the first one on my list for this, I think I'm justified in saying that there are maybe 2 SNL alum movies that are any good. Movies that
Whoa. Just name them so that I can argue with you if you're wrong.
Wayne's World, Wayne's World 1, and the Blues Brothers.
Oh, all right. Okay, we can continue. Go ahead.
So when this movie was released, it was marketed so poorly that I expected it to just be another Night at the Roxbury or whatever. Although I don't think that one, it's predating. But anyway, you get the idea. And then years later, I was visiting my friend Robert in New York City, and we got ripped. And he put on So I Married an Axe Murderer. And it just blew me away. And I was like, this movie is great. Why the hell did they market it as some zany madcap SNL spin-off film?
It has Mike Myers in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the marketing of it was totally wrong. It's funny, it's creepy, it's clever, it's witty. It's Myers before he crawled up his own butt and stayed there. It's a brilliant movie. And I can't recommend it enough. And, it's quotable and it's got an ending you won't see coming. So it's just, I loved it.
Whoa,
I
man.
saw it. I saw it once and I can't remember enough about it to have a conversation about it. I just know.
All right, I'm gone.
I've never seen it.
Oh.
I'm sorry, guys.
I have seen the didn't Phil Hartman play a tour guide at Alcatraz in that movie? Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that skit or that scene on YouTube a few times. That's hilarious. But okay, my number 1 would be Breaking Bad. So the main reason I didn't watch Breaking Bad from the beginning was because I didn't have cable when it started, and when I did get cable and started watching, actually I got Netflix and I started watching it from the first season, and I loved it from the first episode because the writers were not afraid to experiment with storytelling techniques. They'd shift from a standard narrative to telling the story nonlinear if they thought it would serve a purpose for them, and they were fine with trying out new things cinematically with camera techniques and angles and all that kind of stuff, and I love that kind of stuff. And the story, I just thought was great. Virginia, you just watched the first couple of episodes, right, for your show?
Yes.
Are you in love with it?
I'm interested in it more. Like I said in our episode, like I'm into this to seeing where the whole drug dealing aspect is and drug making, but I'm not really in for a depressing look at the state of American healthcare system as it relates to cancer patients.
No,
so
it's not. It doesn't. It's not that. That's not
more
what it is.
Criminal, good.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll get there.
Or cancer, bad.
Yeah. I mean, they touch on some of that mostly in the first season, but he steadily it's like in the first season he's like in the first episode he's dipping his toe into this world,
Dipping
and
his
then
toe,
before
he
you know
straight
it,
up killed those people.
yeah, he dips his toe and then he goes in over his head like that, and then he can't get back out, and it's a great show. I mean, and every episode they did a great job of every episode building on the next one. It's not a show you can just go in season 3 and just watch an episode. You know, it took the binging format, that is everywhere now, and really built on it. So
And have you
Vince
seen
Gilligan,
Better Call Saul also?
yeah,
Shane's saying
Yeah.
we
I
might need to watch
love that
it
show.
after.
That's really good. But yeah, do watch it after
Yeah,
because you're gonna have so much more fun watching Saul, knowing Breaking Bad. He makes much more sense as a character in Better Call Saul, knowing the whole, I guess, because it's a prequel. You
Mhm.
know,
yeah, it is a
so
prequel,
it's nice to
but
watch the journey. It's a prequel sequel kind of.
yeah, because
deal.
from
Yeah.
what I understand is that this next season is not going to be the last season, but the season after that may be the last season, and that season I think is going to be a sequel. Like everything that's
That
going
makes
on
sense.
now is prequel, but they're going to do a time shift in that last season, and it's going to take place after Breaking Bad. So.
Hmm.
And then the other one that I wanted to bring up is The Sopranos, another one that I didn't watch because I didn't have cable and I didn't have HBO. So my brother loaned the DVD box set for the first season to me, and I've always loved like gangster movies, and like The Godfather is one of my favorite movies and stuff, and this is that, but set in modern day, and it's got the trope of the analyze this kind of thing where the gangster is seeing a therapist and all that kind of stuff. So, and sometimes it would get weird. They would play with some storytelling techniques too, where they showed a lot of dreams in the show, which would get kind of strange. But I hated how they ended it. Did any of you guys watch this Sopranos when it was on?
I watched it from start to finish. And have you seen it, Virginia?
I have not, but Shane is an avid watcher, so I know that people are not happy with the ending.
Yeah, I kind of really loved the ending, Sean, and I got to tell you, by the last season of the show,
There wasn't an ending.
I was actively rooting for Tony to be killed because he was just such a miserable, reprehensible human being, and I couldn't stand the whole last season because it was just glorifying these horrible people. And The Sopranos went a long way. I think it almost single-handedly turned me off to the whole gangster genre because I'm sick of these people being lionized and sort of romanticized when they're just scumbags. And it also doesn't do very much for the reputation of Italian Americans, and I don't like that either. But I'll get off my soapbox. But I loved the ending of The Sopranos because it was an artistic choice that I respected. And for the first time in a long time, I was with Tony in that diner. And say what you will, but I got this feeling of tension and paranoia, and I had no idea what might happen next. And then I realized that's how he feels all the time. And that's why he is such a basket case and why he's so miserable. And it suddenly, like, a lot of things about the character clicked for me in a very visceral way. And then you had that ending, which, as you say, is a non-ending. And it's just, and I think it was also very, very telling that Don't Stop Believin' was on, because one of the lines of the song is the movie never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. And it's just like, it's not going to end for him. So he's looking at this guy walking in the bathroom. It's just some guy. But he's thinking, is this the one that's going to come up and try to kill me? Or, you know what I mean? You got into that paranoia. And that's what I loved about the ending of the series.
I think I'm just not really crazy about series finales in general because they never they never make me happy. They never do what I think they should do. I mean, that there's been a couple. I mean, The Next Generation had a great finale. There's been a couple, but for the most part, series finales usually let me down.
And of course, Enterprise, right?
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly that. If you've ever seen the finale to Lost, I didn't care for that.
Yeah.
The finale to True Blood was awful. You know.
What'd you think of the finale to Mad Men?
You know what? That one is a little more okay, because Mad Men, it ended with, because he was kind of spiraling, you know, and then it ended with hope, you know, because we see a commercial that evidently he produces, and it's a very famous commercial that we've all seen. I'm like, oh well, if he's on that campaign, then he's going to be okay, you know.
Exactly.
And
he came back.
So, yeah. So